This tutorial illustrates functionality that's available to someone who's configured as a project manager. In this example, the project manager will assign tasks and actions to the team members and monitor progress during the life cycle of the project. The user will enter in their email address and their password and click on the sign in button to access the system. The My Work screen will appear. It will highlight how much effort they've entered in for the current week, if they've got any disapproved timesheets, and it'll also highlight how long ago since they last entered an expense item. If they've submitted expense claims, it will tell them how many are awaiting approval, how many have been approved and are awaiting payment, and how many have been paid in the last 30 days. The user can click on any of these links to drill in and see the detail. In this particular example, this user has responsibility to approve expense claims on behalf of their staff. So we can see how many expense claims require approval, and of those that have been approved, how many still require payment, so we can follow the whole process through. The bottom part of the screen is like a diary, so it shows me all of my commitments with regard to assignments or actions that I must deliver on a project. If I've missed any actions from the previous weeks, any overdue items appear here, and I can simply just click on these and drill in to actually get at the detail. If we now look at the projects, so if I click on the projects tab, I can now build up different lists of projects. So maybe I would build up a list for a particular customer, or maybe a list for internal projects, or a list for customer projects. In this particular database, we have one project where we have the code, description, the manager. It shows me the tasks, the risks, the issues, and it also shows me the actions against the risks, the actions against the issues, and it also highlights anything that's late in brackets. It also shows me the latest KPIs from the project status reports. It tells me how old the latest project status report is, and it also gives me the facility to click on this and to access the project status report. Let's drill into a project and let's have a look at the detail associated with the project. The first thing I see is a list of tasks. The tasks are the individual pieces of work that must be complete in order to complete the overall project. You can build in dependencies, and also on a per project basis you can choose whether you wish to record time at a task level. Typically you'll have a start and end time or date to a task. You'll have the equivalent duration, and you'll have an amount of effort that's associated with that task. You will assign individuals, or indeed you could assign a role if you're not quite sure who's going to do this piece of work. You can review a project plan, so by clicking on this we can see the planned effort, the actual effort and the remaining, and we can use these buttons here to refresh the actuals from the timesheets that have been recorded against each task. You can also drill in to tasks and see who's working on each task. Other things that you might want to do is you can import a plan from Microsoft Project. You can export this plan to Microsoft Project. You could import a similar plan from our system, maybe on a template project, to help you get started quickly. So let's have a look at some of the other things. We can manage risks in a project. So we can now see the total number of risks. Of those, we can see how many are closed, how many are open. Similarly, against a risk, you'll have action items to mitigate this risk happening. So we can see we've got 3 action items, 2 are closed, 1's outstanding, and of that one that's outstanding, it's overdue. So at a glance we can see, and by pointing and clicking we can drill into detail. If we have a look at a risk, You will have a risk title, a project, an owner. A risk will have a status, so it'll be open or closed, and it'll have the date that this risk was identified. Note that anything with a red asterisk denotes a mandatory field, which must be populated. You can choose to publish a risk, and in publishing a risk, you may have your projects organized into a hierarchy, and you can choose how far up the hierarchy you wish to publish this risk. There's traditional ways of monitoring risks. For example, what's the probability of a risk happening? Low, medium, high. And if a risk happens, what will it impact? And typically a risk will impact the cost of a project, the timescales, or the quality of the final deliverables. You can input further information with regard to this risk in this field below. Very powerful feature is the ability to click on this tab and to add in a mitigation plan. A mitigation plan simply is where you assign to a person an action. You tell them what date it needs to be done by, you can specify the priority, and then you simply type in the details. When this person has completed this action, they'll change the status of this action to closed. Issues are very similar. The only difference is if I edit an issue, you may wish to associate an issue with a risk. Everything else is similar, except you won't have a probability because an issue has already happened. One little attribute that people do like to use is a way of monitoring the ongoing status of an issue. Is it neutral, improving, or getting worse? All of this gets picked up at the end of month or end of week project status report. Similar to the risks, you can develop an action plan to resolve this issue. All of those actions will appear on the My Work screen for each individual. We can also monitor all change requests in a project. And if we just take a little example, and here we've got piece of work that would take 20 days, it would cost this much, and we propose to the partner we would have to pass on £9,000 of the charge, and we can see that's pending approval. If it was approved, we could input an approval reference. But a half day here, 2 days there, all of these changes normally get logged either in spreadsheets or an email, but they all add up, and even if you weren't going to charge your customers, it's very useful to monitor this information. The next thing we'll look at is communications. Very simply, this is designed to replace email. We send people emails, they get filed away in subfolders and they get lost. If I specify an action, in this example we can quickly fire off actions to an individual or to multiple people with a to-do status indicating the date we require the action to be complete. Input the information down here, and in all of these actions we include attachments. Unlike email, we can monitor whether or not actions have been complete, and we can filter all the overdue items, all the completed actions, or all the items that remain with the to-do status. You can also filter all the communications that have been assigned to a given person. Similar to a to-do action, you can also input a progress update, simply documenting that something has happened on a project. Simply type in the details, include some attachments if you wish. We could also build up a lessons learned library. Once again, I would emphasize all of this is configurable, and if some of this is unnecessary for your implementation, we can simply remove these options. We can also store documents. So we can add a project document. You can categorize documents. So project mandate, business case, and then you simply upload the document, choose the file, and it's got full version control. We can also do project status reporting. This is a very powerful feature. What it allows you to do is it allows you to add a project status report, and it allows you to define key performance indicators, for example the delivery status. There's a risk that some of the major deliverables will get delayed, and maybe it's nothing to do with the plan. Maybe it's the fact that there's a merger going on or that there's a management restructure. The resourcing status, there's some issues or significant issues. Maybe the customer is unable to allocate the correct people to the project, and you can monitor the budget status. So all of this means that we're operating 20% within budget, but we're storing up issues here. If you save and close this, what you can then do is it will run a report on the fly, and then it'll put that report into a PDF. So it means I can go back and look at status reports in May, in June, or whichever months. I can click on the PDF. And this is a real live customer example. So I can see the project, the manager, the date. It shows me all the completed tasks, overdue tasks, tasks due for completion in the next 30 days. And it also shows me risks and issues along with the mitigation plan, resolution plan. It also has the narrative that I've put in here. So once again, this saves project managers lots of time, but indirectly what it does is it subtly encourages people to keep all of this up to date. And it's only by keeping this up to date that the system's integrity is kept intact. You can also click on the Approvals tab. I can now drill in and see all the timesheets that require approval in this project. And the same with expenses. In addition to this, there's a full suite of reports that will list out all the change requests, completed tasks, all the stuff that you would expect to find when running a typical project.